freelightroom.com. Easy to follow, easy to learn, designed to inspire. Hey everyone, my name is Matthew Shonwell from freelightroomtutorials.com, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to process a Milky Way photo from camera raw to the final processed image. I recently captured this image of the Milky Way and posted it to some of my Facebook groups and received some great comments and responses. One of the comments that I received was, "How did you process it?" What a great question. With that question, I decided to create this step-by-step tutorial on how I processed my Milky Way image from start to finish. Here is the before and after of my Milky Way image, and you can see that there is a dramatic and pretty amazing transformation from the camera raw version to the final image. Now, shooting in RAW means that all of the color adjustments and processing I did to the image was quite easy and did not take away from the actual quality of the image. Now, in contrast, if I shot this image as a JPEG, I would not have the same freedom and layers of information to work with. You always want to shoot in RAW if you're going to process your images. That's an important rule of thumb. With that being said, let's get started and hopefully inspire some of you to have some fun and really take your images to the next level. The first step I took was in the lens corrections panel, and I enabled the lens profile correction for my specific lens. I did this because each lens has its own unique distortions, and by enabling this profile, I was able to start to minimize any distortions created by my 20mm ultra-wide lens. I was able to enable this lens profile, and I also did some specific manual lens adjustments with the overall distortion and also the vertical distortion. Every lens is unique, and like I said, you want to make sure you correct the lens distortions before you really process the image. Once I fixed the distortion problems, I then started to adjust the exposure elements that are all located in the basics panel. My first adjustment was to the overall temperature of the image. Now, it's a night image, so I chose a Kelvin temperature of around 3000 K, which is on the cooler side because at the end of the day, it is a night image. Then I also adjusted that specifically to bring out more blue in the night sky. After that, I dropped my overall exposure to minus 0.45, increased my contrast to plus 34, increased my highlights to plus 14, and reduced my shadows to minus 23. Now, as you can see, the Milky Way in the photo itself doesn't really pop off the page yet because the adjustments I did were all done to highlight the next few changes that I'm going to make. The first real change that we see to happen in the image is when I adjust the whites and increasing them to plus 63. Now, I increased my whites to plus 63 because each star is a white dot, and I really want to make sure that aside from making the Milky Way look awesome, I also want to have some bright stars. The next step in the basic panel was to reduce my blacks and increase my clarity to plus 47. Now, looking at the Milky Way, we can see that it's starting to take shape and become more visible, but I'm still far off from the final image that we can see here. We're getting a closer look, but we still have a lot more things to do. Now, my next step is to make some of the features more prominent. Now, those features I'm focusing on are the orange lights at the horizon and the purple haze that is just above the horizon line. That's the transition color from the orange city lights to the Milky Way itself. I did these adjustments in the HSL panel, which is also known as the Hue, Saturation, and Luminance panel. I focused on the specific saturation of orange and purple. I increased the orange to plus 63 and the purple to plus 44. Now, if you toggle the panel on and off, you can see that it does make a significant improvement to the colors. It's not a major change, but it's definitely doing some really good things. The reason why I did this adjustment in the HSL panel compared to increasing just the saturation of the overall image is because the saturation tab for the overall image is an absolute adjustment to all of the colors. I don't want to adjust every color. I just want to focus on the specific saturation of orange and purple. Now, the next step was to add an orange tone in the split toning panel. Now, to do that, I first chose a color that I wanted to influence the highlights, which was an orange hue or orange tone, which would go over the entire image. And I chose the highlights to be plus 30, the saturation of that color to be plus 24, and I reduced the balance to minus 60. Now, I reduced the balance to minus 60 because I wanted to blend the colors a bit more. Basically, the balance tab acts like an opacity function. So when you reduce the balance in your split toning panel, it basically reduces the impact or the impact of the actual toning adjustment you're doing. So it's an important thing. I didn't want to leave it 100%. I wanted to drop that down a bit. Now, the Milky Way is really starting to come alive in the image, and the next few steps I did really add more color, depth, and reality to the image. Now, to do this, I'm going to use the brush tools that are located just above the basics panel. Now the first brush I'm going to do is designed to add some depth and create a unique transition from the Milky Way to the blue sky that surrounds it. I did this first by resetting my brush to brand new. Then I double-clicked the Effect tab to reset it, and then I chose the shade of green, a color that I want, in the Color tab. Putting green in the image as is not going to look good, but if I drop down the density to 22 and the flow of my brush to 79, the green will act as a bit of a teal blue and really add a nice accent color. Now the next brush I used is designed to help start to define the elements in the Milky Way, and I achieved this by adding a brush that only adds clarity to the image. I first needed to create a new brush and increase the density from 22 to 73 so we can get more of an effect. After that, the next brush I used is to focus on adding saturation to the colors in the Milky Way. Now for this brush, I'm increasing the contrast to 100, the saturation to plus 75, and the clarity to 27. The last thing I'm going to do is drop down the density of the brush to 30 to get better results and have it blend in a little bit more. Everything I've done up to this point is designed to enhance the details, colors, and more prominent features in the image. As they stand, I could leave the image as is, but I have a few more adjustments that we can really do to really take this image to the next level. To do this, I'm going to add a radial filter and invert it. As you can see, this small change starts to make every adjustment I made up to this point look pretty awesome, and basically the radial filter is designed to draw your eye to the center where the Milky Way is and darken out the exterior of the image. It's important to note, a great image limits the distracting elements and draws you into what the image was designed to showcase. One of the last steps is to increase the saturation of the blue in our image. That's done through the HSL panel, and I increased the blue to plus 24. Now the byproduct of increasing the blue is that it starts to blend that teal brush we added a few steps back in a little bit more naturally. Now the last thing I did up to this point was essentially sharpen and remove some of the noise and grain that was created when I took the photo. Now I did this in the detail panel and adjusted the amount of sharpening to 54, the radius of the sharpening to 0.9, and the detail preservation to plus 57. The next thing I did was reduce the amount of noise via the luminance to plus 62. Now, if you look at the before and after of my image, you can see that in a few minutes, and with a bit of artistic vision, I was able to enhance my image of a beautiful Milky Way to an image I would want to print and put on my wall. In my opinion, it's so important to remember that photography is 100% completely subjective, and what I did to my image might be overkill to someone else, and that's completely okay. Your job as a photographer is to only get the results you're looking for, not to satisfy the opinions of others who don't have your artistic vision. My name is Matthew. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and like it. For more tips and settings, please check out freelightroomtutorials.com. freelightroomtutorials.com. Easy to follow, easy to learn, designed to inspire.